Hi, I'm M.
And my name is Bea.
And this is
Fangirls Anonymous. A quick warning, this podcast is not for kids.
We get into some pretty explicit stuff.
But if you're still with us and into that, welcome.
Well, hello there.
Hello, M. How are you doing this fine day?
I just had some In-N-Out, and it was so tasty.
That does sound pretty awesome.
Anyway, what are we talking about today, Bea?
We are talking about LadyNoir, which, before anybody who knows what we're talking about goes up in arms, is but one of many names for this ship.
So many names. And it's fun that there are so many names, because of things we will get into. What even is the show Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir?
It is worth noting that the original show is in French, which I will not attempt to say the same title in French because I couldn't quote it directly to you, but I will point out, just because I did take French for several years, Im is going to refer to him as Cat Noir or Chat Noir, and I'm going to refer to him as Chat Noir, which is the exact same character. I just physically cannot pronounce it any way but the French way. It's a failing of mine.
I can try it in the French way, Chat Noir. But if I do say Chat Noir, I'm sorry that it sounds American. Apparently French people think it's cute. So, think I'm cute. Anyway, it's a crazy show, right? Like, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's ultimately a very simple kind of formulaic show, but within that, it just sort of runs with its own premise, and it's funny how much they just, like, it just happens, and you think about it later and you go, did that? Yeah, okay.
Did I actually just see the Eiffel Tower fall down? I've never seen that before. That's crazy that it's in a television show for children that is animated and is about French magical people. It kind of goes into the vein of like Mahou Shoujo, which is the Japanese magical girl genre. And if you don't know what we're talking about, you've seen it before.
Yeah. So, the quintessential magical girl show is Sailor Moon. It's about a group of girls who, through various means, usually some kind of guardian of a sacred power, acquire, usually themed, different powers that allow them to transform into superheroes, basically, go and fight evil. Usually a specific evil that has to do with this power that they have or something that the ancient guardian is related to. You'll find that that's mostly the formula for these shows. Sailor Moon, I don't think it was the first one, or it could be argued that it isn't the first one, a whole debate for another time, but it definitely was defining. A little bit more recent example that may or may not be familiar to anime buffs is Madoka Magica, which is sort of a tropin version, but has a lot of the same elements and is a little bit more exploratory, a little bit meta. On the more European side, that might be a little bit more of a direct influence on Miraculous is both Winx Club and Witch, which were Italian magical girl shows that wholeheartedly took on the formula of a magical girl given us a mystical power that can transform into a superhero to fight an evil. I watched them as kids, so I'm vaguely hopeful that that might be something that rings a bell with people. Also, being Italian, they are, at least geographically, decently adjacent to one another.
True. I loved Witch. If you're around our age, like early to mid 20s, then like you'll know what we're talking about because that was all over TV, I think, when we were young. Yeah, super fun.
In the case of Miraculous Ladybug, the show itself has all of the elements that I talked about before, but specifically it is about Marionnette Duponchang, who is our protagonist, and Adrienatte, who is also our protagonist, love interest, deuteragonist, a lot of question marks there.
They're kind of like, it's a duo protagonist show, I would say.
They're sort of deuteragonists, but if you had to pick one, in much the same way that Dean is truly the star of Supernatural as opposed to Sam, Marionnette is much more the hero. So take that for what it's worth.
I guess when I think of the protagonist, the show or the movie or the book is almost always in the perspective of that one main character. But if it's like essentially the same amount of perspective for two characters, then I would call it a double protagonist show, which I would say is Miraculous Ladybug. So, I don't know. There's an argument to be had. But yes, when you think about Miraculous Ladybug, it's called Miraculous Ladybug, which is Marionnette.
And a lot of the emotional problems come at us from her. and she's the one who quite literally is the only one with the power to save the day, which
True. That's true.
comes from this artifact that she was given by a mysterious old man, quite literally. She has a pair of magical earrings, inside of which, or magically tied to which, lives a
Yes.
little fairy creature called a Kwami, who is the one who gives her the power to turn into the superhero miraculous Ladybug. And Adrienatte was approached by this same mysterious old man and was given a ring
The Mr. Miyagi of the show, I would say.
in so many ways.
Yeah.
It's not subtle. The show is
No.
not subtle.
Not at all.
He also has a Kwami, but instead of turning into Miraculous Ladybug, he turns into Chat Noir, which is where our theme comes in, which is all of the Kwamis turn these people into animal-themed superheroes. Now, their powers actually don't have anything or very little to do with the physical traits of the animal. They are a lot more metaphoric.
I will say that the Kwami's names are Tiki and Plag. So Tiki is Marionette's Kwami and Plag is Adrien's Kwami. And there are names for all of them as well. There are more Kwamis than those two.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
For all this, that this starts out as sort of a duo of protagonists. In later seasons, it becomes a halfway ensemble cast. It's
Yeah.
confusing.
It's like that funny little middle ground between these are the two main characters, and then there's a bunch of other people that like are definitely characters that they're in almost every episode. But it's like Arthur from PBS. Arthur is definitely the main character, but everybody knows Muffy, okay? Everybody knows DW.
Yeah, there's an ensemble around the protagonists. So
Exactly.
and it's bigger than a 5-man band, just to clarify it. This is not a 5-man band. It is not even necessarily like a reoccurring cast in some respects. There's a set of, I want to say, 12, 15 characters that show up in almost every episode, although not all of them in every episode and not all of them as a focus. She has a class. She goes to middle school, college, and she has a class, and we get to see them all the time in true like American cartoon style where nobody changes their outfit and the set stages are all the same a lot. That's sort of what we have here, but with characters.
It's kind of funny now I think about it that Marionette never changes her outfit because she loves clothes.
Yeah, fashion is a huge aspect of this show.
And Adrien is literally the son of like a guy who is famous for making clothes and designing clothes.
And is a
He's famous
supermodel.
fashion designer's son, and is yes, he's a model. So it's like, why wouldn't he change his clothes all the time?
But he wears the exact same shirt every day. I feel like in meta, we could explain that as he thinks, based on his own cartoon research, that's how normal people act, and or he's doing it as an act of rebellion against his father. Marionette, I have no excuses.
Yeah, that is so funny to me. Now that I think about that in that way, oh my god.
I think we should quickly go over what these superheroes fight, because that is kind of important.
Yes. So, there's this guy. We don't know who he is. Can you hear my sarcasm? In the show, his name's Mothman or Papillon, which just means butterfly, right?
Hawk Moth. Not Mothman.
Oh, well,
Hawk.
sorry. Mothman is... I love cryptids. I need everybody to know, listening to this, I love cryptids. So in my head, he's Mothman, but he's actually Hawk Moth. Anyway, but in French, he's Papillon, which means butterfly, which is funny. He has this ability to send out these things called akumas, which are little butterfly moth thingies that go out into Betty and find somebody who's having a bad day and changes them into a monster regarding the situation that they're having a bad day in. So, like, one of the famous monsters, or Kumas, is, like, this guy was mad that people were being rude to pigeons, and then he became Pigeon Man, or whatever.
There is nothing funnier than a interestingly modeled middle-aged male character who, in true Batman villain fashion, is like maniacally laughing in his cloud of pigeons as he attacks our heroes.
Oh my
It's
God.
awesome.
Yes, if you need a good laugh, go watch that episode. Oh my god, it's so funny. So basically, what the show is a monster of the week or monster of the day kind of episode or show. So like every episode, Ladybug and Chat Noir need to fight this new Akuma that are all different and all 90s, and it's just perfect. It's so fun to watch. It's not like hard-hitting show or anything like that, but like it's fun.
Not complicated.
Yeah.
If you're looking for anything more than what was just said, don't, because that's it. That's the whole show. There's no real overarching plot. There is no escalation of stakes for a lot of given values. There's no even evolution of their power sets, really. The
Not
only thing
necessarily.
that changes is, like we said, you kind of get an ensemble cast, because, spoiler alert, eventually down the line, they end up sort of handing out some of these magical artifacts so that their friends can turn into superheroes, but they always take the artifact back at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
So-
they're not really an ensemble, because the ensemble changes every time.
I will say that the thing that does change and stays changed throughout the series is the forward momentum of the relationship between Adrien and Marionette. And because that's the only thing that stays changed throughout the show, that's the thing that people are like have glommed onto shipping wise, which is what this whole episode is about. We are talking about LadyNoir, which is one name for this very interesting square ship.
Known as the Love Square as well.
Yes, it's also called the Love Square, almost exclusively known as the Love Square. But yeah, it's not poly, I will say. It's not polyamorous. Anyway, this episode is about the ship between essentially Marionette and Adrien. But because they both have another persona, it could be considered a love square. And let me try and break this down. So, Marionette is Ladybug, okay? Hard and fast rule, Marionette is Ladybug. Adrien is Chat Noir. So, Marionette has a giant crush on Adrien. And they're both in the same class together, and Adrien's a supermodel, and she's just like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. So Marionette loves Adrien, and Adrien doesn't really notice Marionette. But Chat Noir, who is Adrien, is really interested and has a big old crush on Ladybug. Miraculous Ladybug. The Ladybug who is Marionette, but he doesn't know that she's actually Marionette. But as Adrien does not love Marionette when she isn't Ladybug, and Marionette does not love Chat Noir when he isn't Adrien, that means that this is kind of a love square, because one persona loves the opposite of another person's persona, and vice versa. Later seasons, there is a really interesting friendship that goes on between Marionette and Chat Noir. I actually love that ship so much. It makes me so happy. But almost nothing happens between Ladybug and Adrien. Not quite as much as Marionette and Chat Noir.
And that's shown canonically because Marionette is very nervous around Adrien because she has a crush on him. So if she meets him in either persona, she sort of clams up and becomes kind of goofy. And Adrien, who has a huge crush on Ladybug when he doesn't have his sort of like debonair persona of Chat Noir, is also quite nervous around her. So they basically just nervous around each other and don't talk.
In certain situations and in certain personas. It's really fascinating, actually, for me as like a shipper, and for me into fan fiction. Like, it is so fun to read what people do regarding this like weird puzzle of who likes whom. You know, it's so fun. I love it. So these are some individual ship names that people use in fanfic and in fandom. There's LadyNoir, Adrienatte, Ladrien, and MariChat, which
define the four sides of the square, to be honest.
Yes, exactly. If you go through all of them, you're like, oh, okay, that's all four of the different pairings that can exist within these two people that have two personas.
A lot of times these are used either as... They can be used interchangeably a lot if there's an in-game of revealing identities, which is a lot. So many reveal fics. Like, Merlin fandom, watch out. You've got a competitor. But...
It's true.
It's used sometimes if it's a one-shot or it's mid-canon or not necessarily canon divergent, and they're trying to establish this is the pairing that's going on in this fic, or it's the initial pairing that's going on. It's used a ton in fan art just to define, hey, if you want to see these two characters and these two personas drawn together, you see it a lot.
Yeah, so I would say that this is basically the ship of the fandom. There are other, what we call rare pairs or exceptions. But when you look up fic in this fandom, almost all of what you're going to see is what we call LadyNoir, just for this episode. If you like somebody, like, if you like another ship, good luck. It is a young fandom, I will say. It's not been around for 10 years. Wait a little bit, maybe you'll find another thing. You'll be able to find some more stuff later on. But
especially if you're not super jazzed with the extremely heterosexual pairing, a lot of the other bigger ships that sort of get bandied about are a lot of the more queer ones. So for Marionette, who again is so much a focus, two really big kind of competing fandom ships are either her and Chloe, who Chloe is another girl in her class who she has sort of an antagonistic relationship with, but they also have some of the most on-screen interaction time. So, perforce.
But also, if you watch the show, you will hate Chloe. So, I don't know.
We could talk for ages and ages and ages about redemption arcs and not redemption arcs, but the other ship is Marionette and Alya, who Alya is her canonical best friend in the show. And in the interest of symmetry again, which this show does so many symmetrical things, Marionette has her best friend Alya, and Adrien has his best friend Nino. And in show, it's pretty clear that they're heading towards Adrien and Marionette becoming a pair. Although there's some bumps along the way, which we'll discuss as competing ships in a minute. But Nino and Alya are a couple. So fickers sometimes like to turn on their head and say, okay, what about Marionette and Alya being a couple, and Nino and Adrien being a couple, or even all four of them together being a couple, which is a whole different love square. But in show, symmetry aside and end game aside, like I said, the show is not subtle. It's pretty clear where everything is heading. There's the showrunners introduced these other, I guess, competing love interests within the show. So Marionette has a boy who is the older brother of a different girl in her class named Luca, and he's very interested in perhaps dating her. It's pretty clear. So that sort of puts a kink in her plans to woo Adrien. And Adrien has a fencing teammate called Kagami, who is a lot like Marionette, but very Ice Queen. And she's very much put out there as a possible other love interest, although Adrien fills many damsel-y roles in this show, and he has no less than 5 canonical named repeating characters who are trying to court him, which is just nuts. And part of the reason I enjoy the show, because it is sort of a role reversal where all of the women are frantically pursuing him and he's just being oblivious.
It's funny that you say that, because that's going to be something that I will touch on in my rec. Anyway, yes, I also love that it's a role reversal, and that the main character is a young girl too in a superhero show. We don't even get young women as the main characters or protagonists in movies right now. Very rarely do we get that. And it's not a group. It's not like, oh yeah, there are 3 guys and 2 girls. It's a superhero show. Okay.
It's not Power Rangers.
It isn't. It is not Power Rangers, where the pink one and the yellow one are girls. Wait, is the yellow one a girl? Shit.
It changes depending on what season of Power Rangers you're in.
Okay, good. I thought I was right, but that could be just from information from 1999.
Yeah, if anyone here is wondering, are Power Rangers a magical girl? I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because I'm pretty sure they're not, but I could make a very solid case for it.
They absolutely could be. They do get a transformation sequence, which is part of it.
We're gifted thematic powers by an ancient being to fight a specific evil.
Oh man, I love it. I need that essay. Magical girl, or I guess just like magical people, if we're going to be talking about the Power Rangers, that has always been a theme that people use in story, and I love that people have recognized that it is a recurring format. I love it. So this is a good ship. I actually like the ship because of the fun square aspect of it. You never see this kind of thing. You always see in film, especially, the main character is a guy who has superhero powers, or is a superhero and has powers, and the love interest meets both of his personas separately. It's all the time, everywhere. Spider-Man,
Zorro, Clark
Batman.
Kent, Spider-Man.
Yeah. It's everywhere. I love that your first one was Zorro. Anyway, you never see 2 people who are interested in each other both having different persona. And if that is the case, usually it is the one person is a villain and the other was a hero. You never see two heroes falling in love with each other.
If you do, it's the two hero personas falling in love with each other, and there's some
Yeah.
angst about like the fact that they don't really know who they are.
But I've only ever seen that in fan fiction, what you just described.
No,
I've
I
only
feel
ever
like
seen
I've
that.
seen it in comics, and it's
Oh, yeah, different. Most people don't
Mhm.
read comics, you know? No offense. No offense to all of the comic book readers out there, and to you, B. But most people don't actually read them anymore, which sucks. Because they're really interesting from what you just described. I would love to read something like that in a comic. So, do you want to talk about Rex?
yes.
Rec Corner! Alright, people. B, do you want to go first?
Sure, mine are pretty
All
quick. I am wrecking two because both of them are pretty short, but I really, really enjoy them. The first one is Fermeture by KarmaHope, and it's a story in which it's post-series, and it was written fairly early, so it may be completely just now. But the idea is that after they have defeated Hawkmoth and saved Paris, they end up giving up their magic powers and go their separate ways, having never known who the other one was. But some years sort of after this, Marinette realizes that she really is missing Chat Noir. He was her best friend, and so she wants to reach out and find him again. So she ends up doing just that, not knowing who he was. It's really, really cute, and if you just need a little bit of a smile, it will bring one to your face. The second one is called Matching Ring, and it's ridiculous and laugh out loud funny. Basically, again, it's farther down the series, they're sort of aged up. Not sort of, they are aged up, but they're still superheroes, and they're fighting the good fight, and they become really, really good friends, and after a long week, they decide that they just need to let loose and have a break, so they meet up together and get ragingly drunk and wake up married. Again, not very long, so funny, because they didn't know the other one's identity beforehand.
I have read both, and they are very sweet and adorable and very short. Okay, so my rec this week is the Dread Pirate Ladybug by Lycanpictus77, and I know I have spoken about this before in another episode. I think it was our favorite fic over 50k. So basically, it is a cross. Well, okay, it's actually, what if you took all of the characters from Miraculous Ladybug and then put them into The Princess Bride? And the book version specifically, not the movie. The movie's great. Love it. But the book's also hilarious. It's funny in a different way, and it's really good. So basically, what I was talking about earlier with the fact that Ladybug and Adrien, or sorry, Marinette and Adrien are like kind of flipped a little bit gender-wise in the show. I would also say that they're flipped gender-wise in this fic, because Adrien is Buttercup and Marinette is Wesley, and it really works. It works a lot more than you would expect, because Adrien in the show is, everybody's like, yeah, he's really hot. He's a model. I mean, he gets paid to like put clothes on and get his picture taken. And in the book, Buttercup is known to be one of the most beautiful people in the world, beautiful women in the world. So Adrien fits perfectly within that mold, I would say. I'm really happy that the author decided to do that. Marinette isn't ugly. She's just maybe not necessarily model worthy, but I don't know. It fits.
She's not validated within text to be as stunning and amazing as Adrien is.
Exactly. So it's a really good fic, and there is one scene in chapter 5 that makes me yearn. It makes me so happy. And it's not a perfect fic. No fic is, no book is, no piece of media is perfect. But it makes me happy. If you are that person who loves fanfiction, loves Miraculous Ladybug, loves fanfiction enough to listen to this podcast, and also loves The Princess Bride, which, you know, maybe the Venn diagram is a circle with all of those things, you'll love this. It's really fantastic. Well, all right, man. Mm-hmm. We did it.
Yeah.
That was super fun to talk about. I really love this show. It's weird. It's a weird show, but...
Yeah, don't expect more of it than we have said here, because
yes,
you would be very disappointed.
But also, maybe it'll surprise you.
It's a lot of fun, and it's a kid show, so it's the sort of thing you can just put on in the background when you're with family. And you know what? If you know French, put it in French. Confuse everyone.
All right, I think we're done.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see y'all next week on
Fangirls Anonymous. Bye!